This episode is brought to you by Paramount Plus. If you don't already subscribe to Paramount Plus, please use our affiliate link by going to talkthroughmedia.com/Paramount Plus. Using our affiliate link gives us a little credit, which helps us to keep bringing you great content. U.S. residents only.
Hello, and welcome to Episode 3 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds Talk Through. I'm Brian.
And I'm LT.
And I'm Kim.
And we will be covering Season 1, Episode 3 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, titled Ghosts of Illyria. And before we get started, we want to remind you that we now provide early access to a virtually uncensored version of the podcast that goes out, well, let's just say, earlier than the regular feed, and has, what did you call it, all the hot dogs?
Well, yes, because it's not always just sausage. It's what goes into the hot dog.
Yes, it's all the mechanically separated meat. And anyway, you can get access to that for as little as $1 a month, which helps pay the cost of the network. And we decided to change the URL just because it's more than just Brian and Ruthie. It's patreon.com/Star Trek TTM. The other one will still work, but it will now be patreon.com/Star Trek TTM to sign up. And as I say, as little as $1 a month to become a member. So
you get all of that exciting, lightly edited Star Trek goodness ahead of time.
Yes. Get to hear the vocal stylings of LT and lots of other stuff too. So I cut out quite a bit of stuff in the regular recording, which at the time that we're recording this, episode 2 isn't out yet, but I actually took out a whole bunch of stuff. So in the version that you guys get. So anyway, we have some additional feedback on the last episode, Season 1, Episode 2 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, titled Children of the Comet. And let's go to open hailing frequencies. All right, so we got some feedback that came in after the deadline from James, the Augmented Sailor. LT, do you want to read that one for us?
I shall. James starts out by saying Children of the Comet gets 9.8 dress uniform. Huh? He goes to his yeses. And he says, good old-fashioned maritime having traditions. We used to send mess cranks, galley duty generally reserved for new check-ins on ship, to the wardroom for seabag fashion shows. These generally started with some weird random uniform of the day that would never be put together, like working blue pants and working white shirts. The officers generally played along, and it was good for a laugh. That's just an example of one of our more tame Navy rituals. Winky face. Spock laughing. As we know from the Cage, in his younger years, Spock was a bit more open to showing emotion. The laughter over comms was a great example of this. He goes into his nose, and he says, Pike's hair. I feel like it's getting bigger, and it's off-putting to me. It almost comes off as cartoonish to me. Hey, if this is my only no, we're doing good. Now get off my lawn. For hold your not good enough horses. This goes to you guys criticizing Himmer's ability to be an effective chief engineer. Yes, Anars are blind, but this is a species trait and not a disability for them. We don't know that they have some sense that a human doesn't, besides, of course, the precognitive sense that we are aware of. While this argument would be valid for a human being, we can't just automatically assume that the same detriment would apply to an alien species. For all we know, his antenna may act as an effective tool for him.
I suppose that's a valid case to make.
It's true.
Yeah, I can't disagree.
Yep. So he goes on to say, this show is really great. It's following that classic Trek formula. I'll also agree with you guys that right now it's kind of neck and neck between this show and Lower Decks for the best new Trek for me, and we're only a couple episodes in. LT, I liked your analogy of the Enterprise's maneuverability as compared with modern-day warships. I'll say, however, that comparing the Enterprise, a heavy cruiser, to the Nimitz, an aircraft carrier, is flawed. It would actually work against you, as while aircraft carriers are more maneuverable than they appear, they are the least maneuverable ships in the Navy. A better analogy would be to compare Enterprise with a Ticonderoga-class Navy cruiser or a Burke-class destroyer. These modern-day Navy ships are definitely comparable in the size and maneuverability aspect of the Enterprise. A fun little tidbit that you are correct on, though, the Navy's nuclear characters are indeed the fastest ships in the fleet, achieving upwards of 60-plus knots at flank 2 under a full power run, whereas the small boys achieve 45-plus under those conditions. Another fun little tidbit, all carriers carry a plant of 4 nuclear thingamadoos, reactors. Had to work thingamadoo in there somewhere. Except for the Enterprise, which had 6. The 2 extra onboard Enterprises were found to be unnecessary for naval purposes. Anyway, I'm getting long-winded. Those are my thoughts. Living Strange New Worlds. And thank you so much, James.
I'm guessing that's supposed to be lovin'.
Well,
Living and loving.
Living, loving. She's just a woman.
Oh, man.
Sorry, Led Zeppelin.
yeah.
And I thought that I had some errata, which I'll just play it anyway, just because I like to play it.
Incorrect.
And I don't remember what it is. So that very thing is
Incorrect.
So I don't know. There was something that I remember hearing when I went through to edit the Patreon, that when I was working on the full episode, I couldn't find it. So I'm like, so anyway.
Well, Brian, you know, since I haven't brought it up yet, it's all about the money.
Very true. And yeah.
I thought you were going to play the sound clip.
Oh, yes.
The money.
There you go. I gave you the setup and you didn't push the button. So
yeah, it is.
All right, man.
It is all about
The money.
There you go.
Yeah. And I think we came up with that. The first time we played that was on, was for The Walking Dead or Fear the Walking Dead, right? That's so.
I want to say so because it was the clipped off piece of a voicemail that we got somewhere.
Yeah, it was a voicemail, and the only thing in the voicemail was
The money.
Wow.
That was the voicemail. So anyway,
so that's it. Since we have no errata, since we can't remember our errata.
Yeah, if I remember it for next week, I will say it then. All right. So the next, this episode that we're going to talk about is season 1, episode 3, titled Ghosts of Illyria. It is written by co-executive producer Akela Cooper and supervising producer, I believe, Bill Wolkoff, and directed by Leslie Hope. The description from ParamountPlus.com is as follows. The USS Enterprise encounters a contagion that ravages the ship. One by one, the entire crew is incapacitated except for number 1, Una Chin Riley, who must now confront a secret she's been hiding as she races to find a cure. And should I play...
It's always a good time for shock horror.
Always.
It's always. The star date is 12/24.3. The air date was May 19th, 2022, and the runtime is 45 minutes, 46 seconds, so it just edges out not to be 47. All right, Kim.
But it's the next number, 45,
Yes.
46, 47. So you can count that.
Yeah. All right. So we'll start with you, Kim. What would you give Ghosts of Illyria?
Well, I like this episode better than episode 1 and 2. And since I wasn't here for episode 1 and 2, you'll just have to take my word for it. But I give it 9 out of 10 bioengineered genomes.
Okay. Just curious, what would you rate the first two?
Probably around an 8. I don't score at the same level of detail always that you guys do. I usually stay in the whole numbers. I didn't dislike the first 2 episodes. They just weren't quite clicking. And this one clicked a little bit more for me.
Okay. Cool. All right, LT, what about you?
And I was sort of the opposite. I actually went down this week because I have questions and I have an objection or two. But I gave it a 9.5 out of 10. Suggestion, Spock? Run!
Yeah. Yeah.
I loved that. That was great.
And I, too, have gone down. And it's kind of funny because I said in chat, it's like, well, let's see. The first episode I gave a 9.75. This episode, or the last episode, I gave a 9.8. And this one, I'm giving a 9.6. So it's like, okay, so I went down. I'm not going down very far. So, you take it when I say that it's my least favorite of the 3. I'm still giving it a 9.6. So, that tells you enough. And I call it 9.6, just doing off of old episode titles. 9.6, The Inner Lights, or since it was similar, 9.6, The Naked Lights, for, The Naked Time and The Naked Now, or Sub Rosa Part 2.
Oh my.
And it wasn't very Sub Rosa, but I was thinking Ghosts.
No.
I was thinking Ghosts. I was thinking Ghosts, so I thought, okay, Sub Rosa.
There was no Wild Thing and Waka Chicken guitars in this.
No, I protest to this comparison. I don't know what has happened.
There was no Beverly.
Oh my God.
Sorry.
You didn't like that
happen.
candle. Yeah, that was a bad episode.
Yeah.
That was bad. All right, so let's get to our listener ratings. Kim, wants to take the first one.
Sure. James the Augmented Sailor says Ghosts of Illyria gets 9.4. Okay, whatever tweaks your freak.
Rick from Cleveland goes, another incredible episode this week. I rate it 9.9 out of 10. Where can I get that awesome jacket the crew had? Seriously, I need that in my life.
Agreed.
As do we all.
Yes.
Yep, we want it. I hope, Paramount, you are listening, because you could make some easy coin on your Star Trek website just by selling that.
I was like, just come on, Paramount, put it on the website and take my money.
That's right.
Yep. And Wes from Minnesota says, hi, everyone. This episode was a better episode when I saw the first 5 episodes early. He keeps on telling everybody they saw it.
Brag.
Our noses in it, Wes.
All right. Anyway, he says, I give this episode 9 cravings of light out of 10. All right. So go on to our yeses.
Yes!
LT, I'll let you do the first one.
Oh, okay. We'll kick off our listener yeses with Wes from Minnesota, who says, yes, the backstory of Una was something I enjoyed very much. I hope we get more of that. I loved it.
All right.
Rick from Cleveland says, yes for number 1. I was already a fan of this character when we saw Rebecca Romijn's performance in Discovery. This week, she elevated this character to be a true equal to the pure joy I get from watching Pike. She stands out as incredible on a show where almost everything is already awesome. I love that an Una-centric episode can be as awesome as a Pike-centric one. Then he says, yes for Pike supporting Una when she confessed to him that she is Illyrian. I love that both he and Una are more focused on doing what is right than following the regulations. Una then turns this around and gives... Oh, what is this? Is this the doctor's name?
Yes, Dr. Mbenga.
Mbenga. Wow. Did not know that. Una then turns this around and gives Mbenga the same understanding when he confesses about his daughter. He gives a yes for Hemmer. I love this crotchety, sarcastic attitude he brings to everything. He just makes me laugh. And then yes for great writing. On the second viewing, I noticed that the main crisis was over with about 10 minutes left in the episode. Those 10 minutes were filled with some truly great character building that further connected us to Una, Mbenga, and La'an.
Yep.
Look at all those apostrophes in the names. What are these, aliens?
You'd think they were Klingons or something.
Or Bajoran. They also have a lot of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they go by Mbenga. Mbenga. James, the Augmented Sailor, he says, this episode was so reminiscent of TOS's The Naked Time. I was waiting for Boimler to show up, get naked, and ask where the light orgy was. LOL. I'm always a big fan of the medical mystery episodes like these. I thought that too, hence my rating about The Naked Time. Yeah. The parallels were drawn between the Khan-type augments and the Illyrian genetic modifications and the differing rationale for each. This one is a double-edged sword because it sheds light on the ongoing prejudices that go with augments within the Federation in the 24th century with Dr. Bashir. It shows a large flaw within the Federation's rationale behind banning genetic mods. And I said, and yet we know that the ban still exists in the 24th century.
And I tagged on and said, well, at least they're consistent.
Yeah.
You know, this hasn't been something they were waffly about.
They definitely have been waffly about it. Yeah.
This is one of the things we haven't got to yet on Deep Space Nine, but it's one of the things I knew in advance was coming with Bashir.
Yep.
I think it's coming in the next episode, actually, that we're about to watch.
Oh, yeah. Cool. Okay, Kim, what do you have for yeses?
Sure. I thought that the opening shot where they're over the planet and you can see the ion storm, I thought that was absolutely gorgeous. And then towards the end, not right at the end, but towards the end, when number 1 is in, I think they're in, I want to call it a mess hall, but it looks like a fancy restaurant where she's talking to La'an, and they're having the ion storm is still visible in the windows. I thought that was beautiful, too. I was really impressed with those two shots. My second yes is the leather jacket. I think everybody might have that. I would have skipped it, except it's so important. I think we can all mention it. I really liked that Rebecca Romijn finally had something to do. Yes, she was in Discovery, but barely.
Yeah,
I remember when she was announced at Comic-Con. I was there when they announced it, and everybody was they were screaming and they were so excited that number 1 was going to be played by this great actress, and then she didn't appear for a while after that. But then when she did appear, she hardly had anything to do. So I was really happy to see her have something here.
Yeah, and then of course we know now that this show was already in the making, so I think they knew ahead of time what they were signing up to. They just didn't know for sure, what the response was going to be like, but they were like, hey, this could be a show, so.
Yeah. And once the groundswell hit for Anson Mount and the other, Pike-centric characters, I think that it was pretty much a fait accompli at that point.
Yeah.
Because it just seems so strange that they signed her on and then she like had the one scene where she was eating the hamburger and then we really never saw her. But anyway, I was happy to see her here. And then my last yes is when she's doing that little bit of research about the Illyrians and she's asking the computer questions and she's overriding. And then when she leaves the room because she gets that emergency message that she has to go to the transporter room, she shouts, "Clear screen." And I thought, oh, finally, somebody cleared the screens before they left the room. They actually showed a little bit of security, which they don't normally do. So I put that in my yeses.
Cool.
As an IT professional, I concur.
Right. I wanted the screensaver to kick in or something.
Lock the screen before you leave, kids.
Exactly. That was it for mine.
All right, LT, what about you?
Okay. I have to jump on the jacket bandwagon and say I was excited to see him because it is an intemperate universe out there. And the one thing about most of the series that I have always kind of scratched my head over is, so you're going down to a planet that's cold, but they always had the thing of, well, we have temperature adjusting uniforms. And I always remember the episode where, was it Sulu was trapped outside and they were phasering the rock to stay warm?
Right.
And I'm thinking, you'd think Starfleet has been out there and explored all these different environments, and how hard would it be to give him a parka? Give them, if they have, and I'm dating myself, I know, but if you have the Wiggles colored uniforms, at least you could have jackets. I mean, they had jackets in the cage.
Right.
Because, like I said, I grew up with a mother who always said, take a coat. It might get cold. Take a coat. It might rain. I think my next yes was when number one had her moment of introspection at the end of the episode. And this, kind of hit me in the feels. And I'll explain why. That in my careers, both, in the military and in law enforcement, you never just experience a critical incident once. That in the military, if you're the leader and you're doing a training mission, you have an after action review depending on the situation. So you go back over it and you talk about, what did we do right? What did we do wrong? What could have been better? And if you're a first responder and you go to a critical incident, you live that incident moment by moment as it goes down to whatever end transpires. Then you have to sit down and write a report about it. And then you may have to sit down and recount it again to your supervisor. And you may have to recount it again to the district attorney. And you may have to recount it again, depending on how it goes, to your command staff or internal affairs. So then on top of that, you may get to see it again and again on the news. And with all of that, you still have to basically play that scenario again over in your head because it's in your memory. So the fact that she sat down and was thinking about these things that had happened and the decisions that she made, it showed that I think that they were being very thoughtful about everything that had happened. And it wasn't just the sort of end of the episode, we make a few comments, we chuckle at each other, it does the slow pan back on the bridge and you see the ship flying off. That it actually was a little thought provoking, and that went a long way with me. I like the way that both the team on the ship and the team on the ground, Pike and Spock, were both working through the problem in their own way and with the things that they had at hand. I mean, I did find it kind of amusing that Pike is running around trying to make sure the door's shut when the first part, when the creatures were trying to get in, and Spock is just sitting there basically reading the scroll in the library. And he's like, "Oh, this is fascinating, Captain. I'm finding out all sorts of things." And it's like, "Spock, come help me shut the door." But it fit. It was appropriate for the characters. The way that we saw the medical team on the Enterprise trying to figure things out, and number one trying to figure things out and come up with a solution. I just like the fact that you had two separate groups of people that were still working through the same issue. And at the very end, they were able to kind of put the conclusions together. And I think, have a better figuring out of exactly what was going on.
Right.
Because we've always said that Star Trek was supposed to be the thinking person sci-fi, that there was other stuff other than just zoom, zoom, pew, pew. Oh, it's an alien. Oh, it's a strange planet. So from process wise, I like the fact that they're giving that sort of thing some airtime. And that's about it for my yeses.
Yeah, I really like that moment of introspection that number one had at the end. I was disappointed she deleted the log, but I did like everything she said. I thought that was great, actually.
Well, and I would say that's still kind of a, especially since you're here, Kim, it's sort of a Cisco thing to do.
I haven't got to that yet.
But it's still the fact of there are times that I'm really crap at it, but when I journal things and then later just kind of, shuffle that page off, because part of the way that I worked through it is just to get it out. Yeah. I think that was her thing, is she had to, form and give voice to those thoughts. And then at that point, it's nobody's business. And so I could kind of see why she deleted.
Yeah.
I do that all the time, where I will write stuff, things I'm going to say, and then I won't say it. I won't send it, So that's, I know what that's like. But it's like you say, you just got to get it out, or you got to practice to get it out before you actually do. So, well, I didn't write down any yeses. Sometimes I get that way with stuff where today I just got busy with other stuff. But I'm going to obviously, I think the concept was something that I wasn't picking up on so much the first time, but the idea that it is the prejudice there of the genetic engineering and why they engineer themselves to fit the environment they're in, as opposed to trying to be superior. It's adaptability versus superiority. I thought was interesting, but it does show a prejudice there that I never really considered. But if you think about it, it's they're trying to fit in, right? And in a lot of ways, that's kind of prejudicial too, I guess. So what else can I say? I thought it was an interesting, play on a contagion that travels through light. Never completely understood how that worked, but I thought that the idea was interesting nonetheless. What else? I heard a couple other people say things about Hemmer, how they liked him in this episode. I did too. Kind of waiting for my Hemmer episode, which I'm sure we'll get at some point. I was to go back to something I said last week. This wasn't a Pike goes out about his mortality again, but I wondered, at the beginning of the episode when he went out to get Spock as opposed to like number one going out to get Spock. I wonder if he would have made that choice if he hadn't known what his fate was, you know?
I think he would.
You think he would have made the same? And
I think he would have, because Pike strikes me as a lead from the front kind of guy.
Yeah.
And he did I think he did the mental calculus that number one's capable enough, if he's not there, and get the majority of the people back to the ship, thereby protecting the largest number of your crew members, and I can go ahead and get Spock.
Okay. Trying to think what else.
Leather jackets. You forgot to say that.
I want a leather jacket. I'm like the only person that didn't feel like I needed to say it on my yeses, but yes, leather jacket. I'll definitely go for that. Aside from that, I think that's all I'm going to say. So let's move on to our nose. No! All right. LT, you want to go for that?
Okay, we'll kick off our nose with Rick from Cleveland, who says, one no. How is it that Una is the first officer of the flagship of the fleet, and in no physical exam has it ever been discovered that she's not human? More so that she's genetically engineered. We need just a little more explanation here.
Totally agree. 100%. This was not explained, and especially when we go into our spot the references section and you find out that Illyrians already exist in the we've seen them before, and they didn't look human. So what's up with that?
But she talked about them modifying for the place that they are. So if she modified to be more human, maybe, I don't know.
So, but does that mean that they're so modified that they look human?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question.
Yeah.
It is a good question. Or did the other ones just live somewhere that they had, funky, weird alien stuff going on?
I mean, it's possible,
yeah.
Right? And there's some stuff in beta canon that addresses it, but it's odd. But anyway, in beta canon, by the way, I guess I'll lead with this. Say in beta canon, she was identified as Illyrian, so it's good that they actually kept with that. So
yes, they did.
Yeah.
And back before she had a name, some of the notes from, I think, Roddenberry's original notes said that number one was more of her designation, not just as first officer, but she was like, the valedictorian of her class. That's why she was number one. So that was very beta canon as well, because I don't think they ever fleshed her character out past those initial notes that they included with the cage.
Right. All right. Kim, you want to read James?
Sure. James, the augmented sailor, says, how did M'Benga get away with keeping his daughter in the pattern buffer? Did no one know he had a daughter? It feels like there's really no way he could have kept that secret, especially with his daughter having a terminal disease like that. Wouldn't somebody be like, hey, Doc, what happened to your daughter? I feel like this was really shoehorned in and just didn't make sense to me. Also, did something change between the time he stored his daughter's pattern and Scotty's transporter accident that she needed to be rematerialized periodically and he didn't?
Yeah. Either that or Scotty did it a different way somehow so that he automatically rematerialized. I don't know, but yeah, I had a whole bunch of questions on this myself. So
maybe the Doc has Transporter 95 and Scotty had Transporter XP.
Well, they hadn't been upgraded.
Right.
So it is possible.
Yeah, I'm going to have to I'm going to be ranting about that in a minute. So,
Wes from Minnesota says, no, too bonk on the head with the epidemic on the Enterprise. Reminded me too much of COVID, particularly the really bad surges we experienced last year and earlier this year, or even in the early part of the pandemic. Some people just don't like to be reminded of COVID. I want to be reminded every minute of every second of every day of COVID until it's done. Until COVID is gone. I want to be constantly reminded of it so that I don't forget about it, so that I don't get it.
That's why you're that guy, Brian. You can remind all of us that we're trying to forget about it.
Yeah, I will be that guy. I will be that guy until it's gone.
Yeah, me too.
Well, the only thing is, it's not going to be gone. It's always going to be there. It's going to be like the swine flu and everything else.
Probably you're right about that. But, for example, listeners may not realize this, but, when I was, when we were doing Lower Decks for, season 1, I was pretty disheveled, had a really bushy beard, and because I didn't want to go in and get my hair cut. Well, September of 2020, I just shaved it off, not just my beard, but my hair, everything. And I've gone bald ever since. And I stay bald because I still won't go get my hair cut. I still won't go. I won't go. I don't want to go anywhere where someone can come near my face and get their cooties on me. It's like, get away from me. I don't want to be anywhere near you. Right. So,
and see, that's why I got to the point where I said, I'm not Howard Hughes. I can't do that anymore. And I looked at it as I've been exposed to Hep A, Hep B, Hep C, HIV, AIDS, tuberculosis, and smallpox.
Smallpox.
Huh? Yes, we found out about that from the health department at some point in my career. It's like, oh, by the way, that guy, he had smallpox.
Jeez.
Oh my God.
And like I said, my family survived the Spanish flu. Typically the only thing that wears us out are old age and cancer. And I said, I'm not going to live like a hermit anymore, because when it got to the point that I looked like a cross between a hobo that lives in a refrigerator box and Doc Brown from Back to the Future with a beard, I said, nah. So I just can't. It's the same thing. If you get so paranoid, worried about, is a ninja going to jump out of a bush and shoot me? Or, is somebody hiding in the bushes in the woods in the house, or somebody following me? You can be cautious, but I just can't be that level of paranoid.
Yeah. I mean, function. I'm not at the point, like I do go out these days at, where I won't wear the mask, but I still do, the 6 feet and all that stuff. But when it comes to somebody cutting my hair, that's just too close for me. It's too close. I don't want to deal with it. And as I found out, I like being shaved. So I'm going to stay this way. So.
Well, I've given myself clipper cuts, but I'm sorry. I still like going to the barber shop and having my hair cut and having my neck shaved with hot shaving cream and listening to the old men talk about football. So that's the one thing that I absolutely missed, because I enjoy the ritual part of going to the barber. It's just not as much fun when I do it to myself.
Yeah. So I never really had that, so I never missed it because I never had it. So Anyway, that is it for our listener no's. So, Kim, what do you have for no's?
I only have one no, and it's not just this episode. I would have said it probably if I had given you no's for the very first episode. I'm struggling with the interior of the Enterprise. I think it looks like a vending machine. I Googled red vending machine, and this thing called a Coolatron came up, and I'm like, that's it. That's what the Enterprise looks like to me. Just those super bright, shiny red surfaces all over the place. I don't like it. So that's my only no, but it's not specific to this episode.
Okay. And I can see that.
I was complaining about it the other night when James and I were watching it, and he kept texting me, hater.
Yeah, so you're talking about the Coolatron Coca-Cola 10 can?
Yes. Tell me that does not look like the Enterprise.
It does. It does. It does. Although seeing it, I kind of want one. Although looking at it though, a 10 can refrigerator for $219.99. No, not going to pay that. Sorry.
That is a terrible price. You're paying for the red, the bright, shiny red.
And the Coca-Cola.
I guess.
They've got a little bottle cooler like that at Costco that's shiny silver, and, get you a couple cans of Gloss Krylon, take the door off, shoot her in the driveway, and you'll be rocking and rolling.
All right, LT, what about you? What do you got?
Well, I have some no's, and it's sort of back to what James said. Once again, I am bonding with my squid brother, and I started off and I called it medical malpractice, Starfleet style. I have to agree with him. So, did nobody notice that the doc's daughter has sort of gone MIA? Isn't somebody gonna raise the flag of the ethics of you're keeping your daughter in stasis in a non-material form in a transporter in your office? Okay, so she does have a terminal disease and you're trying to keep her alive, but isn't eventually you're going to bring her out of the transporter and she's going to go, gee, Dad, you're turning gray. Gee, Dad, your hair's falling out. Gee, Dad, you're getting old. I just see a real kind of, it went from sensitive to kind of creepy to me for some reason. That, come on, if you look at, and God knows I hate going back to a Batman movie, but, Mr. Freeze kept his frozen wife in a jar in his office, hoping that he would find a cure for her one day. I just think that we're so worried about Starfleet's position on, augments and genetic modifications when a doctor is keeping his daughter, he's keeping his daughter on a thumb drive on his desk and resin her out every once in a while and then putting her back.
Drive.
I mean, sure, Scotty stuck himself in a transporter buffer, but that's because he was going to die in a fiery heap.
Yeah, we saw the crew of Discovery do that just this past season.
But I'm still, like I said, I still think that, isn't there some medical ethicist out there that's going to raise an eyebrow at this just a little?
Well, and the funny thing is, like on TNG, we've seen them put, patients into stasis. I mean, can't he just put her into stasis without, putting her into a transport buffer?
Well, probably so. But then, how long can you keep somebody, frozen or whatever the stasis process is? Like I said, I have some questions about that. The other thing was, ma'am?
I was just going to say that her prognosis was 12 weeks. And I feel like with such a terrible prognosis, I could see you doing something pretty drastic, and maybe the community around you even supporting you in that, just because it is so bad. She is still so tiny, so young, and 12 weeks is a pretty short death sentence. Mm-hmm. So I hear what you're saying. It does seem like it would make an eyebrow or two go up, but when examined, would you not at least have enough compassion to think, okay, he might be right if he could find, but I maybe I would set a limit on it, but if he could find a cure, I think I would understand why he would want to do it.
Well, right. And don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I don't get it. You know, that having been in situations where you get a terminal prognosis for somebody you care deeply about, and you have to figure, you know, for us, you kind of have to work that out in your head. And in this setting, if you had something you could do that would give you more time, yeah, but then it's the, you know, God knows, here I go. It's the difference between, if you want to argue euthanasia or, you know, the dignity of life and quality of life, even though, yeah, she's got a 12, you know, it's 12 weeks and she'll die. Then the other thing is, you know, well, are you not just prolonging the inevitable? So, I mean, I'll fight both sides of that argument. I'm just kind of going, I just wonder, like I said, and two, we've already seen that you've got her in a critical ship system as well. Yeah. And how many times have we seen the power go out on the Enterprise? Yeah. It just seems like that it's still kind of risky.
Felt risky. I do agree with that.
Unless he has a really good UPS on his transporter buffer.
Well, and plus we've already seen them use that medical transporter in the first episode. So, like, is that buffer affected when you use the transporter for some other purpose?
Yeah. And in our careers of watching Star Trek, how many times have they had transporter problems?
All the time.
All the time. So, the other no that I had was obviously somebody needs to up the settings on the sedative hypospray, since we've already had 2 instances of somebody obviously not getting enough in Mr., you know, running alien and the dash through the hall. And obviously they didn't give Hemmer enough since he, you know, got up and scampered off.
Hemmer got up and scampered off? I thought it was Lon.
Well, I thought he got up because he, okay, I'm juxtaposing myself. I thought she took him to the sick bay and he left and disappeared and went to the transporter. Or am I misremembering that?
I think you're misremembering that. Okay.
Cause I know she toted him back in.
Yeah. Yeah. But I don't think he was on a gurney or anything, because he went to sick bay and he did the check on the transporter and then he left. And then later she found him doing the whatever the heck he was doing in the transporter room.
No, he was transporting a piece of magma up the planet.
Yeah. But I think it was Lon who she woke up,
got juiced and ran off.
Yeah.
It was. Well, still, my original contention is still there.
Yes, it's still legit.
You know, obviously, they need to give them more. You know, bump that setting up to 3 or 4.
Yep. Is that it?
And yeah, because I'm still also down with what Rick said, that, and of course, it still fits with medical malpractice. Did she just skip did number one just skip her intro physical? Did she call in sick that day?
I don't.
Are her genetic manipulations such that they don't show up on a normal bioscan?
Yeah. And the question being that, is an Illyrian essentially a human? Like, were they from Earth originally? I don't think that they.
Well, I don't think they may have been from Earth. They may be human.
Right.
And you could make the whole argument of, are there humans in other places other than Earth? But it still goes back around to, if you scan a Vulcan, you know that their organs are not in the same places. If you scan a human, you kind of know human physiology. It just seems like that, the recruiters, when she went to the MEP station for Starfleet, they just didn't do a good job on her physical or something. Or, like I said, maybe her physiology is so close that the scanning technology of the time couldn't detect a difference.
Yeah.
But the doctor kind of figured something out when she was trying to do the blood test. When he said, well, the antibodies are not there. So it's a question. I think it's a cool thing that they've done, but it's still giving me pause to think, well, how did she get this far in her career? Because not only would you have had a physical when you got in, you would probably have physicals throughout your career, annually. And so no doctor up to this point has noticed anything different about her.
I think I read that when they talked about this in one of the novels, that she actually claimed to be a human who was raised by Illyrians.
Right.
But the novels, I mean, they're not canon, so I don't know if that fits with this story, but maybe that's what they were thinking.
Right.
Is that she really is human.
Yeah. Yeah, it's possible, but
yeah, well, it's just, like I said, that's just something that stuck in my head
they should have explained it. I agree.
Cause it just seems to me, it's not something you can just kind of hand wave off. There are things that we've seen in episodes that you don't really question as much. But for this was kind of a big thing, or big-ish.
Well, along those lines, I had an issue with Una lying and saying that she'd never had the sickness. Was she just doing that to cover her Illyrian background or something? But possibly, but I don't know. I didn't believe that she would just, like, I thought when she first denied it, I thought she was denying it because she forgot, right? Like, like she didn't remember having those symptoms, but it's clear that she did. She just was basically lying about it and covering it up, that she, had gotten the sickness, and then later she told the truth about it. I just don't see her acting that way. From what little I know of the character, I had a hard time with her doing that. So that was one thing. And the rest of the stuff has pretty much already been said. So,
yep.
I'm going to go into our not good enough section.
Not good enough, damn it! Not good enough!
Because I know some people will want to hear this. I'll play it too.
Hello, this is Captain Tilly. What the hell? What the hell? Hold your horses!
We'll play them both. All right. Let's see. Kim, why don't you do James?
James, the augmented sailor, says, hold your not good horses enough. I wasn't a big fan of number 1 being Illyrian. How did she hide her background? Also, are Illyrians humans, but modded? I feel like there wasn't enough background given on this. I get that they needed to have someone on the crew be Illyrian to make the ep work, but I feel like it would be more believable with a more low-key character whose background wouldn't be as highly scrutinized. Yeah, we just kind of talked about this.
Yeah,
we did.
Yep. So I had something to say, but I already said it. So, yep. All right, next.
West from Minnesota says, not good enough. Biggest daughter in the medical transporter. While this is technically the first instance of a person suspended in the transporter like Scotty decades later, maybe the technology wasn't perfected yet to have a person suspended in the transporter for years. And again, I think we beat that horse a little bit. And obviously Wes and James didn't object as much as we did, or as much as I did.
And Rick from Cleveland, he says, one, not good enough. Mabenga says there's no limit to how long you can store someone in the buffer as long as you materialize them regularly. If you're materializing someone regularly, then while materialized, they are not stored in the buffer. Yeah. Okay.
That is a good point.
It's true.
That nitpicking Brian would agree.
Yeah.
All right, Kim, what do you have for not good enough?
Sure, I had a couple. I thought that they didn't try hard enough to avoid the ion storm when Spock and Pike were like, oh, let's just slowly walk out here and then wait to get beamed up. And then they're like, run after that. Why didn't they run before that to get there? Let's move quicker, people. Yeah. And could they really not predict anything about the storm? Didn't they know it was coming? I thought that was maybe a little bit weak.
Well, it's like every hero. You walk away from the explosions, so they weren't looking at the clouds.
I also put when the stunt double picked up Hemmer. Part of that was almost like a callback to an old Star Trek where you could clearly see it was not the actor, which is so visible. We laugh about it all the time on Deep Space Nine, but you could really see it in some of the TOS episodes. And this was so clear. When the person turned their head, you could very clearly see it was not the actor. So I thought they could have done a little bit better job there. And then I had the 12-week prognosis
Which one specifically did you think wasn't them?
It was clearly not Rebecca Romaine.
Oh, and the
person turned their head, and it was like, oh, okay. It doesn't look anything like her.
I have a story about that. Okay, so you know who played who was the stunt person that played that was the stunt double for Rebecca Romaine? It was none other than Ava Blackwell, who's on Discovery. She's played several aliens on Discovery, but she's also that lieutenant, I can't remember her name, but the lieutenant that she's played is Ina as opposed to Una.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, so she has played stunt double for Rebecca Romaine actually a couple times already on Strange New Worlds, the first episode too. So but yep, she's played a Kelpian, she's played an Osnalis, so you know those really ugly looking crab looking type aliens that are yeah. Well, she's played an Osnalis. There's been various ones that she's played. So for some reason they put her in Osnalis a lot. She's played like 4 of them.
Well, you know, once they had the crab suit fitted, it was easier to just pull it out of wardrobe.
Yeah.
The last thing I had in Not Good Enough is that the 12-week prognosis for the daughter is going to erode pretty quickly with these long story sessions. I mean, she said he'd read the story to her 100 times. And I thought, your 12 weeks is going to disappear fast if you're spending hours reading the same story over and over. So I just wasn't sure they did the math.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll go with that.
All right. What do you got, LT?
Okay. The first thing that I was struggling with was normally the transporter biofilter is the thing that, you know, saves them from having to rub themselves down with osmotic gel and sit in the tube for hours like they did in Enterprise. But I just was kind of having a problem with why did one transporter buffer biofilter work and one not? Apparently they said the medical biofilter worked better than the regular transporter one. I just kind of went, I don't know. It just seemed a little convenient. Again, not anything that really took me out of the story and made me dislike it, but it's just a kind of a point that stuck in my head. I struggled with the energy creatures just a hair because because I'm still kind of going, okay, so you're going to say that a combination of the ion storm and their reverse genetic engineering made sentient oogie boogie energy creatures.
They've used ion storms for a lot of hand wavy stuff in Star Trek.
Yes, they have.
Big one, this one.
Right. And it was just the point of, engineering accidents, transporter accidents, but it was just, okay, they did something and it was the ion storm. So, okay. And I guess that's why we're so scared of ion storms, because we don't know what's going to happen.
It could send you to the mirror universe. It could turn you into a ghost. I mean,
yeah, it can
very dangerous.
It can make you see aliens. It can make you think you're disappearing. It can do all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Now, when we got Lon's big confession and she was talking about being a descendant of Khan or a relative of Khan, I started thinking to myself, okay, was this his cousin Earl, Noonien-Singh, that didn't get on the ship and managed to survive whatever happened? And, I think the problem is going to be that as soon as they said that name, we immediately started thinking Botany Bay, Khan and augments and freezers. And the impression that I got from what she said was that there were some legacy relatives that were still on Earth or on another, or started on Earth and went to another colony. And that's how she ended up where she was at. But it's still just the notion of, well, does that mean we've got other, semi-augmented kinfolk of the original set of augments that started the war out wandering around in various and sundry places in Starfleet? Again, I think it's kind of a cool thing that they've done, but it's still the measured step of them going, okay, if we invoke this name, it's going to invoke a certain set of lore items. So I just am still trying to parse out how this worked out.
They're going to have to explain it.
They're going to have to give us a little bit more because, hashing over fine details that doesn't take away from our overall enjoyment of the episode is what we do as Star Trek fans.
Yeah.
That just like we've been doing now. I love the episode, but I'm still going to take them to task on some of these things. And I'm just still trying to parse out how her being a Noonien-Singh is going to work out. And like I said, if they say, oh, well, there was a group of augments that didn't get on the boat and stayed and married the natives and interbred and had happy lives, and then they've gone on about their business. But from what she's saying, people still identified her as being either an augment or a spawn of augment. So, it's still a little more story that we need to be told.
They can't play all those cards in the first 3 episodes.
I totally dig it. Totally dig it.
Okay.
But if we come back, further down range and they still haven't given it any more thought or any more screen time, then, I may be waving my flag and pointing my pointer and saying, look,
sure,
they didn't do it.
I'd be totally shocked if they don't already have a whole big thing. You know, there's probably multiple episodes about it. I'd be really shocked if we didn't get a better explanation. But I agree with you. We need one.
Yeah.
Though now that you've said this, we need a Lower Decks episode about Earl Noonien-Singh. I'm looking for Earl. Yeah, that would be great.
Well, I mean, there's always your cousin Earl, it's just, it's a tradition. It's like, well, they live over yonder and we ain't sure, but Earl just wasn't quite right. He's a good boy, but he just ain't quite right. Let's see. And I guess the other thing, and this is my curiosity nitpick and goes back to something that I say a lot in Walking Dead is, so why didn't they take more scrolls out of the library?
Yeah, I wondered this too.
Yeah.
He already had a duffel bag. It's like, carry a bigger duffel bag. If you're going to have this, I guess if you want to go for the Indiana Jones version of this, it's like, our intrepid archaeologist finds the missing Library of Alexandria, but he only takes one scroll that helps further the plot of the movie and leaves all this other undiscovered ancient knowledge there.
Beam them all up. Come on. They're not that big.
See, and that's my thing.
Yeah.
It's like, if you find something, you take it. It goes, and you've missed out on this speech, but it still basically goes back to my role-playing game days, is like, you pillage the body, you take all their stuff, you sort it out later. If you've got all these scrolls, take them. They're not going to use them. They might have some exciting information in them. They may have a set of secret Illyrian spore drive plans in them. You never can tell. But that's about it. I just was figuring, well, you took 2, grab some more.
Yeah.
It's a long time on those long warp flights between adventures. You got to have something to read.
Yeah. Well, I agree. The one thing that I don't have written in the notes, but it was enough to give me pause. And it was actually in the, previously on, and it said, I'm Lieutenant, Lon Noonien, and it didn't say Singh for some reason. Did anyone else notice this?
I did not.
I didn't either.
And I could swear that they had indicated that at some point during the episode too. That didn't say, yeah, in fact, what Nurse Chapel said, Lieutenant Noonien or something. Didn't say Noonien-Singh. So I was like, why the inconsistency there? And I still don't understand why
people struggle with hyphenated names.
I guess. So, believe that's all that I had, other than what some other people had already said. So, okay, so let's move on to our feedback section and open hailing frequencies for a second time. And for the first time in a very long time, we have no voicemail.
Oh,
so the streak ends as, Jeff had warned us, but the streak ends. So the streak, began with, I believe it began with Picard season 1, went on to Lower Decks season 1, then on to Picard or Discovery season 3, Lower Decks season 2, Discovery season 4, Picard season 2, and the first 2 episodes of Strange New Worlds. So that would make a total of I believe, let's see, 20 with 20 with Picard, 20 with Lower Decks, 26 with Discovery, and
2 with Strange New Worlds.
2 with Strange New Worlds. So that, I believe, puts the 88? Streak at, would it be 48? Is that right?
It'd be, I'd say 88. But you said 20, so it's 2, 4, 6,
20.
8.
20 with Picard. 20
it's
with
40.
Okay, yeah, you're right. 20 with Picard, 20 with Lower Decks, 26 with Discovery.
That's 86 and 2, so it's 88.
No, it would be 66 and 2.
So anyway, it's long.
It's 60. I believe the total is 68, not including the one he missed for Prodigy, Kim, because the first episode you guys did, he didn't put in any feedback, so that's where there's an asterisk. But that still means his record is at 68, and I believe DiMaggio's hitting streak was 51. I have to confirm that.
We can change his nickname then.
Yeah, Jolton Joe.
Jolton Jeff.
Yeah, Jolton Jeff. No, 56 is, so 56 was the, Joe DiMaggio streak. So.
Well, since he's Jeff with a G, wouldn't that be
Jolton Jeff?
Guilting Geoff. But that is an impressive run.
Yep.
And he's just on pause. He'll be back.
Yeah. So anyway,
he'll be back.
So it's pretty impressive, though. All right, so we got some feedback from James. So, Kim, you want to read that first?
I think LT should do that one since there's a call out in there for him.
I did that.
All right, why don't you do the call out and do his?
Yes, I will.
Yeah.
James the Augmented Sailor says, this episode was fun. It had some points where I was like, but overall not enough to really drag it down anywhere near to say threshold level. LOL. So far, I think the show is batting 1,000, even with Pike's huge hair. And of course, my comment was, don't hate the pompadour, James. Don't be hating on the pompadour.
I like his hair. I wish I had long, luxurious hair like him.
You know, I wish I could do the old Conway Twitty rockabilly pompadour. But as, who was it? I think it was Gallagher said, my hairline has made a beeline for my behind. So he goes on to say Nurse Chapel and him are also a lot of fun with their brands of levity. Man, this show is so good. Can't wait to hear everyone's thoughts.
I think the pompadour was a little bit lower in this episode. I think it was at its peak in episode 1, and then it's shrunk a little.
Well, like I said, he's kind of got that Johnny Bravo hair going on.
Totally. That is a good comparison.
I mean, that's the first thing I thought of.
Well, Rick from Cleveland says, I am glad that they did not drag out the Lon Khan reveal. We all expected it when we saw the casting announcement. I like the spin they're putting on it, and it will be interesting to see if there are more long-term effects on her relationship with Una due to her feelings about augments. I'm also glad Spock's hair and makeup were on point this week. I missed feedback last week, but it looked a little rough in episode 2. Sideburns drawn on with a Sharpie rough. This week was back to form. I thought that too last week, that it looked like they were drawn on.
Well, they almost had that, you know, that dippity-doo little swirly thing going on. And I said, yeah, they need to be nice and sharp, pointy.
Yeah, pointy to go with the ears. He goes on to say, one interesting note, in the Ready Room, they did the Khan history lesson and stuck with the 1990s eugenics wars timeline, even though Strange New Worlds and Picard both seem to retcon this into the 21st century. I don't want to keep belaboring this, but it's pretty inconsistent. I do suppose it is tougher to retcon than they realize, since specific years are outright mentioned in Space Seed. Oh well, I've accepted far worse canon inconsistencies as a sci-fi fan.
Yeah, I picked up on the fact that they, mentioned that not in Strange New Worlds, but in on the Ready Room, and yet, they've got this, retconning going on, and I don't know, I don't mind the retconning per se. I mean, it would be nice if they would explain it, but at the same time, I don't know. I guess I'm kind of two minds.
Well, it's like you and I discussed on the Picard episode, Brian, that when you're dealing with a show that started 50 years ago and they're trying to pick a date in the far future, they didn't know that they would still be around 50 years later. So
right.
that, far in the future is not quite as far as it ended up being.
Right. And, that's like one of those things.
But I think it's fair for him to say, pick a retcon and stick with it.
True.
True. Very true.
Yeah. And, they could even, they could have even explained this in the time travel this past Picard. I don't know. Said everything still happened, but it was moved forward or something. I don't know, but we'll see. All right. So that is it for our feedback this week. That's why I was all thrown off. Kim, what do you have for your other notes? Do you have anything?
I have one thing, and it's maybe a controversial opinion. In fact, I told this to James, not the augmented sailor, but husband James, before we started, and he said, don't say this, Kim, don't do it.
Say it then.
I'm going to do it. Anyway, I actually have never been a Spock fan. He was never my favorite. It's not that I didn't like him, but he was never my favorite character.
Okay.
And I love this Spock. I love Ethan Peck. He has somehow managed to create my favorite Spock. And that was James saying, oh God, Kim, don't say that. But that's the truth. I am now a Spock fan.
Interesting. How did he convert you?
Wow.
I just really like the way that he portrays this character. He has such a great delivery. A little bit like the way, was it Tim Russ who played Tuvok?
Yeah.
He's got that super flat way of saying things, but somehow he manages to convey a lot of feeling behind it. Like even when Pike asked him what to do before the storm hit, and he just said, run.
Yeah.
It was just delivered so well.
Yeah.
There's just something about his delivery, the tone of his voice, the way that he plays a Vulcan, I think is great, or a half Vulcan. My favorite scene in this episode was when Pike was pacing and they were having that conversation about his anxiety and how, he really needed or Spock was, I guess, trying to get him to recognize that anxiety wasn't helping. And I just thought that conversation was really good. But I also loved him as Spock on Discovery. I guess this version of it just clicks for me. And so he's really quite easily my favorite of the Spocks.
Quite easily. Interesting.
Wow.
I think he's doing great. So don't get me wrong. It's just, I'm surprised, but,
I understand.
Well, just because Leonard Nimoy's Spock is so iconic, that's,
Yeah.
Well, and I'll say this: the thing about Ethan that gets to me is he reminds me of his grandfather in some of the ways he can deliver lines.
Oh yeah,
that one of my favorite lines from Gregory Peck was when they were in the scene before the mission during the Guns of Navarone, when he's talking to David Niven, and he's like, you're a genius. Come up with something. He says, and he was holding a pistol, and he says, you've got me in a mind to use this thing. So it's like, so come up with a plan. Just it's like Kim was saying, it's just the way Ethan delivers his lines, you can tell that he's got some intensity, but he delivers it so, I don't want to say flat, but he delivers it so straight.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I would go as far to say that I like him better than Nimoy, but I definitely like Ethan Peck more than Zachary Quinto.
Definitely.
Even though
I would agree with that.
Even though that, Siler and I go way back, because I loved Quinto on Heroes.
Agreed.
But I don't dislike his Spock, but I just like what Ethan Peck is bringing to the table.
I didn't grow up watching TOS. It's just slightly before my time. It used to be on in reruns when I got home from school and my brother watched it. It wasn't a big thing to me, but the movies were big because I would go to them with my brother, and,
right.
We loved them. I vividly remember going to them and how much we enjoyed them. But even in those movies, Spock wasn't the character I loved. I loved Kirk. I loved the passion of Kirk. If you're going to compare William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy, we probably have a different conversation. But Kirk was the character that I really loved. And so now it's like a competition for me between who do I love more, Pike or Spock. I don't know. I think they're both great.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll definitely say that from a screen chemistry perspective, I definitely like the Spock Pike vibe.
Yeah.
I like the way they work together.
Yeah.
And
I do too.
I especially have liked when you get, Una and Spock and Pike together, that I love them as a group in Discovery. And I think that this show is going to give us more of that, because I think the three of them work.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. And I think, so far they're just hitting out of the park. LT, what do you have for other notes?
Well, my last thing, we've already hit on it a little bit, but just the fact that they're playing with the concept of the Illyrians.
Yeah.
As we've already said, we knew from previous, maybe beta canon, maybe unpublished canon, maybe novels, that number one was an Illyrian.
Right.
Then we had the Illyrians that we've seen in other series, and they weren't, like we said, they weren't what we got now.
Right.
So I'm not taking it as a nitpick. I'm just kind of saying it's going to be interesting, given what we got this week, to kind of see how they're going to finish fleshing the Illyrians out. And I think that it's going to be interesting, and that maybe there are other Illyrians in Starfleet
that I don't know about,
that are just playing normal humans, which I would totally be cool with, because then later on, maybe we can have something where we sort of get, I don't know, an Illyrian independence movement where they actually come out and say,
we're human too.
We love Starfleet and we want to contribute to the Federation like all these other guys.
Yeah.
And while we've already said that the canon through the series have been consistent about genetic augmentation of people, I just wonder how this is going to play out long term, because we know that it's still a ban, but it makes me wonder if they may have to start taking it on a case by case basis, or if somewhere down the road we're going to end up with an Illyrian Measure of a Man episode.
Well,
Which is kind of an interesting thought.
Rebecca Romaine was on, the Ready Room this week, and she hinted at the fact that they were going to re-examine this. So whether or not this is, something from season 1 or if it goes into season 2, it seemed this whole thing seemed to be setting up, some other episode or even episodes where they talk more about this. So I wouldn't be surprised even a little bit if this does become another, story.
Yeah. I got 2 more things real quick. One of them is and it occurred to me a few minutes ago, since we know that obviously they have some issues with scanning, maybe that's how we ended up with undercover Romulans posing as Vulcans. Maybe there's not enough difference between them that they can actually say, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah.
And the very last thing, and because I didn't think it was to the point of a no or a not good enough, so I guess she changed shirts before she went to sick bay.
I assume she did that on purpose. She didn't want to explain it.
Right, because I was kind of going, she had the big scene where she ripped her collar, and then the next thing, it's gone.
I think some of those little things like that were what made me like this episode more. It was just this sort of weird scene where she started to tear her shirt off, and I remember when we were sitting there watching it, I was like, oh, this is interesting.
Yeah. And
it made me think of X-Men.
Did you think she would turn blue?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
But at least it was the point where she was like, after she kind of snapped out of it, it's like, guess I'm going to have to change that.
Yeah. Whoops.
Yeah. There was something that I noticed it was right in that initial cold open, when number one's talking to Kyle. He says, who knows? And he either said, I heard one thing, but the caption said something else. So the caption said, who knows when we get back? ? Where I thought I heard, who knows what we get back? Like, in other words,
he said what?
That's what I thought he said too, but the caption said when. So, but of course, when I thought of that, I thought of, for example, some of the things that I'm going to segue right into my spot the references now. Transporting into an ion storm. Of course, who came from a mirror universe thing, but Lorca, when he transported into an ion storm. And of course, I believe that's how Kirk, Uhura, and Scotty ended up in the mirror universe. So they were transporting in the middle of an ion storm, I believe. We also had that mishap of the Vulcan science officer who was killed in that transporter accident in TMP. It made me think of that. So
what we got back didn't live long.
Yes.
Oh, right.
Right. Talking about pattern buffers, of course, Scotty was stored in a pattern buffer for 75 years on the Janolan. Illyrians, the first time we talked about, them being covered before, but in actual, like, the show, we first see them in Enterprise Season 3, Episode 19, titled Damage, and that the guest star on that one was Casey Biggs, who, of course, played Damar on Deep Space Nine. He was the Illyrian captain in that episode, and of course, it's been mentioned, but he didn't look anything like a human. He, had different ridges on his head, and if I'm not mistaken, had like webbed hands or something. I don't know. It might have been from a different offshoot or something, but I'd have to go back and watch the episode. But supposedly, Illyrians, these Illyrians, and I saw pictures of him, didn't look at all like Una. So
I watched that episode last night. I never really watched Enterprise, but I wanted to see if there was something I was missing about the Illyrians. And so I, Googled it and then said, okay, I'll go watch that. It's barely in that episode. You don't learn anything about them. It's super brief. It's really about something else that's going on.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
That's how dedicated I am to this podcast. I went and watched an Enterprise episode when I walked on the elliptical, but I was like, I don't understand what's happening in this episode.
Very cool. And thank you for that. Una was, we also talked about, of course, that Una was listed as an Illyrian in beta canon. There was talk about her being like adopted or, like human raised on Illyria. Supposedly she had two brothers, that, were also raised on Illyria, but, we don't know. And of course, this is, first like direct, mention of Khan. So, and of course, Khan Noonien-Singh, a descendant of Lons. And of course, at this point, she does not know anything about him being alive and just, sitting frozen and adrift on the Botany Bay. So, all right. So that is it for our Spot the References section this week. And let's now go into our news section and open our Shipwide announcements. And they had one of those at the beginning of the episode, and I just love that whenever they have that whistle. I used to always love that when I was a kid. Anyway, all right, so we've got news from Wes Huntington, of course, and here we go.
Hi, everyone. I'm Wes Huntington, one of the two co-hosts of the Twin Cities Trekkies podcast, and this is your Shipwide announcements for this week. This week's guests in the ready room were co-executive producer Akela Cooper, who co-wrote Ghosts of Illyria, and Rebecca Romaine, a.k.a. Number One, a.k.a. Una Chin Riley in Strange New Worlds. They talked about the episode in general and also about Una's secret of being an Illyrian, which had allegories of United States prejudice of other races. There was also a featurette on the legacy characters of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, which included Uhura, Number One, Spock, and Pike. There was also a featurette on the lineage of Khan Noonien-Singh, as Laan Noonien-Singh, played by Christina Chong, had mentioned the name of Khan Noonien-Singh in the episode. There was also a sneak peek at next week's episode entitled Memento Mori. Here's what's making news this week in the Star Trek universe for all you Talk Through Media Star Trek podcast listeners. If you've been biding your time before committing to a Star Trek Delta badge for your jacket, bag, or cosplay uniform, you have another option to consider. The Star Trek Discovery era badges from QMX are out. These badges were first announced back in 2019 during the second season of Star Trek Discovery, but had yet to appear for 3 years until they finally did at Star Trek Mission Chicago. The metal badges are replicas of the ones seen on screen, representing the 4 divisions on board the USS Enterprise: Command, Science, Operations, and Medical. Each full-size badge, with a magnetic clasp, comes paired with a smaller 1.25-inch pin-backed version of the same design. They are now available on Amazon for $40. Brooklyn, New York school teachers are taking a new approach to connecting with students who may not speak much, if any, English at home. According to a report from NBC4 New York, Faculty at the St. Mark Catholic Academy in Sheepshead Bay are promoting and learning Klingon as a way to develop empathy and produce more productive communication in the classroom. Many of the students at St. Mark's have recently come to the United States from Eastern Europe, and the primary language spoken at home isn't usually English, if it's spoken at all. The school sought out the American Center for English Language Studies at St. Joseph's University, or ACES for short. They developed a training program for teachers utilizing the Klingon language as a launching point in lessons, overcoming linguistic challenges, building student confidence, and developing empathy for the struggles of the student population whose native language isn't English. As part of the training, interactive role play is used to help educators understand the language barriers their students might be facing. Our hats are off to the teachers at St. Mark Catholic Academy for boldly going where no classroom has gone before. Many of us invest our time and our streaming subscriptions to Paramount Plus, especially to watch Star Trek. Others invest their dollars, sometimes quite a few dollars, in the company that owns Paramount Plus, Paramount Global, formerly known as Viacom CBS. Deadline reported on May 16th that Berkshire Hathaway, the multinational conglomerate holding company led by Chairman and CEO Warren Buffett, disclosed it had purchased almost 69 million shares of Paramount Global during the first quarter of 2022. The announcement jumped the stock price of Paramount Global almost 10%, though it was still well below its 52-week high. Deadline also stated that Buffett often looks for value in down markets, which apparently he found in the restructured Paramount Global. Streaming subscriptions also topped expectations in the first quarter of this year. First teased about at Star Trek Mission Chicago, Star Trek Prodigy Supernova now has more information for fans. In a special live event Thursday morning, publisher Outright Games, in partnership with award-winning developer Tessera Studios, Paramount Consumer Products, and Nickelodeon, released gameplay footage and new details about the upcoming video game. The Star Trek franchise's first ever family-friendly video game aimed at younger players, Star Trek Prodigy Supernova, tells the tale of the USS Protostar crew from the hit series Star Trek Prodigy, as they go on a real Trek-style adventure. According to the description, after the USS Protostar picks up strange readings from a dying star, Dal and Gwyn must race against time to save their friends, their ship, and an entire planetary system before a supernova destroys them all. Using their unique skills to overcome ingenious puzzles, endure hostile environments, and battle deadly robot armies, Dal and Gwyn must save their captured crewmates Jacob Pog, Rock Talk, Zero, and Murph. But they soon encounter a deadly new enemy, one that will stop at nothing to destroy the USS Protostar and change the very course of history. Players can either choose to play either as Dal, voiced by star Brett Gray, or Gwyn, voiced by Ella Purnell, either in solo mode or a two-player local cooperative mode. That gameplay style should be familiar to Star Trek gaming fans, as that was the same way of the 2013 Star Trek video game, which starred the cast of the Kelvin Timeline film series as a promotion for the release of Star Trek Into Darkness in that year. The rest of the Prodigy voice cast is expected to appear in the game as well. Together, the crew will explore the beautiful alien worlds of Orisi, Mirios, and Terezi, each with their own hostile environments, puzzles, challenges, and mysteries. They'll also make first contact with new species and collect items that you can use to customize your own Starship Protostar. Star Trek Prodigy Supernova will be available this October worldwide for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Nintendo Switch, Xbox One, Xbox X and S, Steam, and Google Stadia for $39.99. Back in February, after the CW had picked up its pilots for this year, the Babylon 5 reboot was not among them. However, Babylon 5 creator J. Michael Straczynski had tweeted out to fans that the reboot is still very much alive, and this was confirmed earlier this week by CW chairman and CEO Mark Pedowitz. Back in February, Babylon 5 was in active development with the CW and Warner Brothers for the fall 2022 season. It was now announced that Babylon 5's reboot is in active development at the CW and Warner Brothers for fall 2023. The CW's version, which Straczynski is writing and executive producing, has been described as a, quote, from-the-ground-up reboot of the praised 1990 series from Warner Brothers Television. The new version would follow John Sheridan, an Earth Force officer with a mysterious background, who is assigned to Babylon 5, a 5-mile-long space station in neutral space. Twin Cities Trekkies is a weekly podcast dedicated to everything Star Trek. My podcast co-host Mackenzie Flickinger and I talk about everything from the original series all the way through Star Trek Strange New Worlds and everything in between. New episodes are released every Wednesday. You can find Twin Cities Trekkies on every platform you can think of for podcasts. Our social media handles is TC Trekkies Pod for both Facebook and Instagram. You can also reach us by emailing us at tctrekkiespodcast@gmail.com, or you can leave us voice messages when you find the podcast at anchor.fm/Twin Cities Trekkies.
Well, thank you so much, Wes, for that news. And I know he wasn't expecting there to be much news this week, but it turned out that there was quite a bit. And I didn't even know about the Warren Buffett news. Did you? I didn't know about it.
I hadn't heard anything.
Yeah. So that's good news as far as, the company, I think. And of course, there have been news about how, Paramount Plus has been doing well in streaming, has been gaining, market share. So, all of that I think is good. And speaking of market share, there has finally been a, release of the, stuff for the digital demand expressions for, Parrot Analytics. And before I get started, there was one article that they released, which was on Parrot Analytics. They had linked to an article on Forbes, which says Star Trek soars as the takedown thrives. I'm not sure what the takedown is, but they said that Star Trek Strange New Worlds is the most in-demand series this week on streaming, and it is, in fact, the case. It is listed in the number 3 spot, so it went straight to number 3. And when you say that, how can you say that it's the number 1? Well, because the first 2 are Stranger Things, which haven't had a new season in a bit, and The Mandalorian, which also is not having a new season until I think later in the season, in the year. But Strange New Worlds hit at number 3, and it's just under the Mandalorian's number at 35.1, whereas The Mandalorian was at 35.3 times the demand of an average show. Now, it's got a long ways to go before it catches up to Stranger Things, which is at 50.6, but nevertheless, that is a pretty impressive start. Picard came in at, and this is for the week just ending, after the season finale of Picard. It was in the number 6 spot with 34.6 times the demand of an average show. So they're both pretty close. There's only like 0.5 times the demand, and there are there's like 2 that are tied at 34.8 with Our Flag Means Death and Moon Knight, both at 34.8. So that's why it didn't get like number 4. But anyway, still it's a good performance, and hopefully they will release another number or another report next week, and we can let you know how the show is continuing to do. But that's it for our news this week. So to submit your theories and feedback, go to talkthroughmedia.com/feedback, where you can submit text or audio. Call 216-232-6146 and leave a voicemail. Email us at strangenewworlds@talkthroughmedia.com. You can post in our designated episode designated episode thread in our Facebook group. That's at facebook.com/groups/Star Trek TTM podcasts with an S. You can tweet us and Instagram is at Star Trek TTM.
If you would like to support the podcast, you can like our page on Facebook. That's facebook.com/talkthroughmedia. And while you're there, write us a review. As Brian just mentioned, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Star Trek TTM and at PicardCast. Share us on Facebook and retweet us on Twitter, especially when we post the new episode is out. Subscribe to the Talk Through Media YouTube channel, where you will find our newest episodes first. You can subscribe to the podcast in Apple Podcast or the podcast client of your choice. And while you're there, give us a rating or a review. You can also go to podchaser.com, where you can rate and review the podcast and even individual episodes. Finally, the best way you can help us keep the lights on is to support us via Patreon. That's patreon.com/Star Trek TTM. We'd like to thank our Patreon supporters: Andrew Davis, Morning Pace, Trey, Mike, Robert Kaiser, Jeff Gentry, X-Force 11, Kevin Lyle, Michael Carrier, Aaron Mays, Brian Shiro, Kim Vogley, Kyle McAdams, James Robbins, and me, Lawrence Todd.
All of the podcasts from Talk Through Media can be found on the Talk Through Media all-inclusive feed, which includes Rebinge DS9, a la Kim, Star Trek Discovery Podcast, the Star Trek Picard Cast, the Star Trek Lower Decks Podcast, the Star Trek Prodigy by RebingeIt,
It's called Star Trek Prodigy, a RebingeIt podcast.
There you go. Thank you. And the Walking Dead Talk Through. And Kyle, LT, and I are continuing doing Fear the Walking Dead Talk Through. We just did, actually it was just LT and I this week, did season 7, episode 13, which was a bit of a groaner, to say the least. So there are only 3 episodes left of Fear the Walking Dead this season, and then we'll probably be doing Tales from the Walking Dead, I imagine. Not sure when that starts, but
we'll be doing Tales and then potentially doing Negan and Maggie's Big Road Trip and the Unknown Daryl series.
Right.
Whenever they come out.
Our next episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds Talk Through is going to be covering Season 1, Episode 4, titled Memento Mori. It is written by co-executive producer Davey Perez and Bo DeMayo. Not sure what position Bo DeMayo has, but I know Davey Perez is a co-executive producer and will be appearing on the Ready Room next week. And is directed by, and the reason why I went, oh, that's interesting, for those of you that are part of the Patreon, because I'm going to be cutting this out for everybody else, a former editor on The Walking Dead, and that's where he cut his chops to do directing, Dan Liu. So I recognized that name right away as soon as I saw it. So he's now directing Star Trek. So very cool. Anyway, I don't have a description for this one, but that's what I know. So until next time, I'm Brian.
And I'm LT.
And I'm Kim.
Peace and long life.
Live long and prosper.
Watch your caboose, Dix.
Dixon Hill.
That's a good one.
A couple of